evening, chat. How are we doing today? It is currently 10 p.m. my time. Yeah, I took a little nap before the stream. I think I fell asleep around like 4 or 5 or something. I woke up like near 8. A little EP. But yellow, blue, so true, color. Right, yeah. Let's talk about today's stream. So, yeah, today I want to talk about how malware are leaving their tracks or rather, malware developers are leaving their tracks in their malware, occasionally by accident. Now, instead of actually telling you the technical details, let's instead start off with something a little bit more easier to understand. So, you guys have heard of EXIF, right? Like, the thing in pictures that tell computers about their metadata. We're looking at something similar today. So, here I have an example. I've got, oh yeah, there we go. So, we all know the classic EXIF. You know, it tells you everything about the photo. That's how you see information like how it's shot and what ISO it's shot at, using what device. And at some point in Discord's lifespan, remember way earlier in the day, Discord actually did not strip EXIF timestamp, EXIF information. And, you know, this was a thing. This was a very common thing back in the earlier wild days on the internet, where people would upload their photos and unknowingly it has their geolocation inside, because EXIF can store some like the GPS data. So for example, here we have the exact coordinates of this person's address and when this was taken. And it's kind of similar in a way that these kind of metadata, there's some of it present in malware as well when they are compiled. And by the way, this is just the sample data. This is not my actual photo. I think this, I found this on a EXIF testing Git repo or something. That was like from 13 years ago. But yeah, anyways. So the idea is that whenever you compile an application, there is going to be some leftover about its developmental information. You know, that's also how sometimes things like you would see videos about video games and they're like, oh, during this development, we know this one that was in place because all of this was left in the executable. Similar thing going on here. So let's start off with username. All right, so one of the pivotal information that would be left in these malware would be PDB path. So whenever you compile an application that is using the default linker settings and debug settings, when you build it, there's also going to be something called a PDB. And a PDB is what basically tells anything that attaches to the process, for example, a debugger, or if we're looking at it back in Visual Studio or anything like that, it would tell the debugger or whatever is currently inspecting it, it'd be like, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what this line corresponds to in the code. And PDB contains information like that. Now, a lot of times, by default, if you have the debug flag on, this will, by default, emit the full debug information. You can manually turn this off using debug none, but occasionally you still want to check if there any other thing in the pipeline that might generate a PDB. And how would the debugger know where to look for the PDB? Well, the application, when it's generated, will also leave a full absolute path of the PDB inside the executable. So here we have an example of actually multiple examples. We're gonna go through right now. So we've got, for example, let's start off with username, and we have multiple tools that can look at this. You can look at it with DIE, detect the easy. You can look at it P and Anamist, or you can look in IDA. IDA will also tell you, well, hang on, where it is. 9.4 now, right? No, 9.3. There we go. So for example, when you launch it with IDA, it'll tell. I thought I fixed the licensing issue. Oh no, never mind. There is. Okay, so okay, this one is not a good example because it's a .NET one. We'll pick another one. Oh, that's also .NET. That's also .NET. Do I not have any executable in this folder that uses? Oh, there we go. IDA 64. Oh, IDA, yeah. Yeah. So by default, when you load a P executable into IDA, if it finds a PB path in there, it'll tell you, hey, this file actually has debug information stored in here, or rather stored at this address. And it's gonna be like, hey, do you want to look for the file at the path and or the Microsoft Symbol server? By default, when you load up any Microsoft executable, it'll also have something similar to this, except it doesn't have a full path. It's gonna be just the file name of the PDB. But yeah, for example, this one has this Chrome injector.pdb stored at this particular path. Now, what does this tell us? Well, this tells us the file was compiled on a system that has the standard Microsoft Visual Studio REPL path. So by default, if I remember correctly, Visual Studio stores any of the default code stored. They're stored in user profile source repos, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure, because these days I usually point it to my own directory. And yeah, for example, there's the username, and it also tells you the project path, project name as well. Okay, now let's take a look at the other .NET ones that we saw earlier. Let's close it out here. So you don't, obviously you don't want to have to fire up the IDA every time you want to look at the PDB information. So what you do is you use a little simpler tool like the Anonymous. And let's open up the file, same file from earlier. Not you. You. Yes. Okay, so here we can see in the debug directory that has the PDB information stored in there. Same thing that we saw earlier. This is a way faster way of looking at this. Now, this also tells us a few other things that we're gonna get to. Well, actually, I'm not gonna talk about it just yet. Let's just focus on the debug directory first. So here we have the PDB file information. That also has the signature, etc., etc. And here are also other things that might tell us that, hey, it might be generated from standard MSVC. Also might have RTTI, which we're gonna get to in a little bit. I actually wasn't planning on covering RTTI here. You know what? I'm gonna get to that later. Okay, so let's take a look at the other ones. For example, the other three files that are .NET that I forgot they're .NET executables. This one should have the same, yeah. Okay, so this one also has a PDB inside. You can see that it's stored on the desktop under the folder name C2. Can I make this bigger for you guys? Magnifier. Oh yeah. Oh god. Okay, this is a little laggy, but here we go. So we can see that this file also has the username, the CIAHW desktop. It's stored under C2. It's called itself RE shell, and this is the client. According to it. Why is my computer lagging? Okay, whatever. Yes. Let's move on to the next file. I think not using the magnifier is actually a terrible idea. Never mind. I'm gonna exit out of here. Come on. Because it's actually making my computer lag for some reason. Alright. So same thing. Okay, so this file, now we have a very unique username here. It calls itself, is being compiled on someone's desktop whose name is David8866, stored on their desktop under their folder tools new backdoor is backdoor method 1 module module backdoor is module command is server DLL. So that tells us a lot about this file already. Like, even without looking at the actual reverse engineering side of things, this already tells us, okay, so we have several expectations here. We have the expectation that this might be someone whose name is David8866. This tells us, okay, it's probably a backdoor of some kind. This also tells us, okay, it's probably IIS related. And we know that there are probably multiple methods of whatever method means, but there are probably multiple of them because it's method 1. And also has module backdoor. So that tells us that, okay, this might be just one of the modules. There might be multiple. And see the next one. So the next one is Visual Pro. So this one is something that is used, not exclusively, but like occasionally used by Mustang Panda. So this has the username ptcat, and we can see that it calls itself Visual Pro, and we know it's a .NET application because, you know, we also saw the .NET stuff here. We also saw that it was loaded as a .NET thing earlier. So these are just a few things that would, well, first of all, it would tell us the username already. So that is already a very specific anchor that you can use to do more retro hunt with. So for example, you can write a YAR rule that says, hey, I want to look for this particular username that looks like this. I also want to look for if it's whether or not if it's a PDB path. So usually what you do is, at the simplest, you would probably write some like condition 1 being a string that goes to that particular username that we just talked about. So for example, it'd be C user ptcat and then /, and then you probably do like the name of the PDB. So for example, client.core.pdb. That would be like the most basic way you can go about anchoring it inside a rule. And we talked about YAR rule last time, where it is a rule that is used to define malware family. Now let's talk about project name next. So similar concept here. All right, so here we have this particular file. I believe was a rootkit that was being used as the EDR killer. Well, opening IDA, because that's not relevant here. We can see that it also has a PDB that says, okay, it's a remote program, which we can assume it's remote accessing Trojan or things like that. And we can see that it's stored under the C code v10. So, okay, so there are probably multiple revisions or something. And we can see that it calls itself erase. So I believe this module this driver is normally loaded as drv_erase.sys on the victim system, because it's dropped by something else. Okay, and here we have, okay, so this one we can see that it calls itself Casper, and okay, it has a versioning name on there, so it says 5.7. And we can see that it also probably supports TCP and UDP. And we can see that's probably compiled for MFC. File format unrecognized. I assume this is a shellcode. Oh yeah, it is. That's fine. We'll get to that later. Okay. And this one, we can see that it's stored at a relatively unusual path. Seeing Z, it would make me think that it's probably on a network attached storage, but not necessarily. A lot of people would usually put drives at the, a lot of people usually mount their drives at the latter half of the alphabetical order. with either a RAM disk or a network attached storage, where like most obviously it's not like a local drive of some kind. Obviously, in this case, we can't really confirm that, but we know it's at an unusual path. That's at Z. Now, with all of these, we've so far talked about how, you know, sometimes they'll show their username, sometimes they'll show their project name, and you know, if these projects are stored at a very particular address, a very particular folder or path, then that's also something you can use to anchor things down as well. Because, you know, not a whole lot of people are going to be compiling their application under that directory. Z also means wine sometimes, but yeah, you wouldn't run a compiler under wine. But you wouldn't run an MSVC environment under wine, or at least the full compiler environment. And here we can also see something very peculiar. So it calls itself new MM. Now, why is this particular? So if you're familiar with the Chinese language, pinging specifically, you might immediately think, okay, MM sounds like Muma, which is basically Trojan. You'll see that this kind of acronym is actually used a lot in these kind of paths, because, you know, they're either usually spell out the full name, or they'll just route the acronym for it. So in this case, I believe this probably translates to Trojan. And next one. Okay, so next one, we're back to the IIS thing again, except this one, it's under DIS Driver Manager. You can see that it calls itself Hijack Driver Manager. So once again, without looking at these, without actually reverse engineering, we can already infer a lot from these PDB names. This one is from ePacker, Cyberlink, latest source, multi-thread protocol architecture, side project, first stage, HTTP Arsenal main. Okay, so you can already tell that this is probably, well, there are a few interesting tidbits there. For example, okay, we see that as Cyberlink in there. Okay, so it's probably related to Cyberlink in some way. You can see that, okay, as first stage, okay, so there are probably multiple stages. HTTP Arsenal main, that could be inferred or imply that there are other protocols that are supported outside of HTTP, things like that. Okay, once again, we're back to the whole IIS thing. And we can see that it has a very similar path from the prior one. And I have no idea which of these samples are grouped together, by the way. Like, I just, a lot of these are random samples I grabbed off of my known good samples, or known bad samples. But from this, and we're going to talk about the compile timestamp later, we can infer that this file is probably related to the other one that was also compiled under d:/IS. Those are probably from the same family, some kind. Now, that's not necessarily always the case. One thing I do have to specifically mention here is that take everything you see here as a grain of salt. It's supposed to be a clue, not a definitive answer. Do not take all of these. Do not take any of the information you've learned from here as definitive proof that this is related to what the file name or path suggests, because these can be forged, and I'm going to talk about the importance of this later on in the stream. When PDB betray the fact that author can't even Git, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if many of these are just so messy that they don't actually do any Git versioning. I think most sane people do these days, but anyways, back to this. We can see that it calls itself ISCPP, so that's probably C++. GM, we don't really know what GM would probably mean here, but we see that there's a 动态, so that means dynamic. So, okay, so that's probably something, it's dynamic in some structure or way that it calls itself that. Okay, so this one, okay, so if you've been following the whole otter cookie case, you're probably familiar with this. This is used by a DPRK adjacent group, but it's not exclusive. I'm not going to talk about specific attributions here, but just know that this was being used by a DPRK group at some point. This is basically what people call a tsunami rat. And where do they get that name from? Well, the Python code that uses actually references tsunami multiple times, but very importantly, it also states that it calls itself tsunami in the PB here. So it's stored under E, tsunami, it's stored under tsunami source, and it's compiled as tsunami client. Okay, so this one is stored under H this time. Once again, all of these drive names are relatively peculiar. It's not under C or anything like that. It's specifically under H. And Shen Tou, that probably means post-exploitation scenario. So that means that they've infiltrated into somewhere already. And MM, once again, probably Muma, so that's probably Trojan. So that, once again, tells us a lot already. This one, also, once again, back to the whole Chinese thing, because this one, well, first of all, it's stored on a very common username, administrator. You know, many Windows installation by default does have an administrator account available. You just have to enable it or create an account. Let's call it that. And that's on a desktop. And you can see that it calls itself YK for floor mail. Okay, so YK. Here we can assume that means Yuan Kong. So that means remote control. And you can see that's probably related to mail of some kind. And it calls itself XFVR, which I assume is what the actual DLL name is going to be. Okay, so far we've learned that, okay, so what PB tells us. Possible feature list, or possible features. Protocols. Versioning. Well, it doesn't really count as a feature, does it? Modularity, etc. It also tells us possible versions. V7, V6, etc. Also tells us possible project names. Let's just call it something like Trojan. Infiltration. Etc. And it also tells us, okay, there's the possible username. For example, the David8866, things like that. Hello, people on YouTube. How are you? I'm doing great. Hello, EP. What else? Was it PT cat or something? Okay, so we've learned all of these from just the PV path alone already. Now, what if someone decided to just go in there and messed up the PB string? Well, this is a very common example of how someone might go about messing up the PB string. So this is from the Mustang Panda group. What they would do is they would go in there and mess up the paths manually. We'll talk about how to disable PB path generation in the first place later, but it is something that they can do. I just don't really know why they do this, but you can tamper with those. Oop. What's that? What you're looking at is malware developers leaving their traces. and that's what you're here to learn about. Why is 64 debug running? All right, get out of here. Okay. Disable add compile time /debug none. I believe it's none, right? Not no. Yeah. Manually tempered. Gibberish. Okay, let's look at another example. Once again, they messed up. They straight up just mashed their keyboard and then just manually changed it. Once again, same thing. I don't know why they don't change the PDB name while they're at it. They just changed the directory name. So, at some point they were manually. I know they're manually doing binary patching because I've seen times where it results in the PDB path that's like absolute gibberish, where like it's not even real deep codable text. Also, they just do things like that to mess up the path. Alternatively, they'll also just replace the entire string after the drive part. That's also something they do. And here we have a very particular example. So instead of messing up the entire path, what they do is they mess up the folder names, just the folder names. So this is something I believe that belongs to, I think it's the do not group. I'm not sure. It's either the Indian or the Pakistan group. What they do is that they would manually change up the PB. They'll manually change up the folder names and then screw up the path here. So they changed both their file name and also changed the PB name. Either that or they're actually stored as is like this. Do you make apps, do coding, or like use microcontrollers? I do none of those. Should one day do my project that does ML on random typing, try to infer their keyboard layout? I'll be honest, it's probably something you can do. I mean, from what we just saw there, this is clearly QWERTY, right? Because like it's on the left side of the keyboard. Then what do? I investigate and catch bad guys. That's what I do. Well, the latter half of that is debatable, but like I investigate. Miss 30 minutes? Well, it's probably not something you don't already know, but it's just PDB path related. But, you know, you can always catch the VOD. Actually, you know, speaking of missing things, and time, I don't know how this relates to the segment that I'm going to take a quick little restroom break. I'll be right back. For those that can watch the stream that are on Twitch or YouTube, I'm currently waiting for the Twitch ad to elapse. Give me a second. It's gonna be another 40 seconds. Alright, I am back. Man, that ad break took forever. Okay. Alright, next thing. Let's talk about what's next. Right. So, occasionally, you'll find strings that look like this. Well, what does this tell us? You probably can't tell if you're on... I know this is very tiny, but you're just gonna have to like zoom in on your full screen TV or something. But it says it's stored under C, Windows, Microsoft.NET, Framework 64, the usual .NET FX4 path, under temporary ASP.NET files, event, gibberish, app, web, _ gibberish. Okay, so what does this tell us? Well, this actually tells us this file actually came from a ASP.NET dynamically compiled file. So this is not something that is compiled on a malware developer machine, but this came from a local source environment. So what they usually do is occasionally they would pop CS source code and then run it dynamically on their machine, and this is how you end up with PDB path like that look like this. What are we doing? I am explaining how malware leaks their path and what that tells us about developers. All right, same deal here. Pretty much the same, except, you know, different path. That's it. All right, so do you sometimes develop malware for fun? I actually don't. I mean, at best, I just, at best, I would locally compile the actual malware themselves, but like, that's about it. And maybe play around with it. But like, ideally though, as a investigator, ideally you should play with all the tools that you have access to. So that includes things like all the popular C2 frameworks. For example, I think it would be nice for you to, if you can get your hands on a working copy of Kobo Strike, you know, play around with it. Play around with Malleable C2. Play around with how things actually work on there. Play with Adaptic C2, Sliver, a V Shell, what else? Mythic, etc., etc. At bare minimum, as a researcher, I think that's something you should probably do in your free time, because like that would actually really help you understand how things work. But other than that, I don't really write malware myself, mainly because I don't have the time to. A lot of times these investigations take up a lot of time already in my work hours, and in my free time, I'm already loaded with a bunch of projects. So that is not something I actively do myself personally. All right, next thing. So let's talk about, right. So sometimes a lot of these applications will probably be written with things that are a little bit more exotic, quote unquote. For example, they might not be written with MSVC. They may not be written with the usual MSVC environment, so you don't get things like the whole PDB generation, etc., etc. I'm glad you mentioned Adaptive C2. Cheers from the Russian community. Yeah, so I've seen Adaptive C2 being used in the wild a lot by different threat actors. Actually get used quite a bit these days. All right. Anyways, yes. So, yeah, you might sometimes have things written with different languages. So, for example, they might write with Golang, they might write with Rust. Some more exotic developers might even write theirs in Zig. But some of these different languages actually have very verbose compiled artifacts. So, for example, Golang bundles the whole package that is used inside these compiled applications. So we'll have string references to all the dependency that this project may have used by default anyway, so we'll get onto that later. It'll also reference things like the local path. Now, p-analysis isn't a great tool for this, so we're going to use IDA for this. Alternatively, I could just rip grep it. I have rip grep installed. Ah, wait. It's installed. Oh, wait, I do. Okay. This might be a pack sample. If this doesn't work out, we'll just fall back to rip grep because I have the pattern that I can use for this. All right. Okay. So, yes, by default, IDA actually does try to parse for the type information that's in Golang. So, for example, the RVA to member mapping, I think is a thing in Golang. So that's why I can rebuild all of these method names. And towards the bottom should be the actual main code itself. Yes, the main. So we have things like, okay, download command, etc., etc. So this one is a relatively clean sample, as in like all the method names are still intact. Now, what does this tell us? Well, let's take a look at the strings. This one actually, I can actually adjust the font size now. Okay. What does this one have? Let me double check. Which file did I open? 6E1. So, one way you go about sifting through all these massive strings, well, first of all, you can just do .go, and it'll give you all the local paths of all the dependencies that are used. So you can see that this person actually had their Go environment installed on their program files, which I believe is a default when you use the MSI installer for Go. And the fastest way you can go about checking more about this particular sample is all the Go samples is that if you .go, and you'll often see that there is their local path of the local project. Okay, so here we can see that it's stored under d:/reva harsgo loader master fistinger /agent.go. Okay, so this tells us a few things. So first of all, this is someone probably cloned it, or rather they downloaded a zip from a GitHub like interface, because usually when you download a package on GitHub as a zip, you'll get the dash branch name at the end here. So they didn't git clone it. They must have downloaded the entire zip, and this is probably related to the project name. And here we can also see that, well, some of the dependencies were actually stored under user profile /go. So we know we now also have their username in here as well. And next one. Close out this. I should probably install a 9.4 on this machine. Shouldn't matter too much for Go though. Gonna wait for it to run a little bit. All right. Once again, not Go. I wonder if there were situations where they leaked their full name like this. Well, most people don't have their full name written for their... I hope most malware developers aren't actually leaving their full name in the username profile, user profile, and actually compiling on their main machine. But, you know, I could be proven wrong. I mean, that probably has happened before, actually. And that is exactly why hygiene like this is very important. We'll talk more about OPSEC hygiene towards the end here. You can see here, same thing. This time we can see that, well, this was built on probably a default Lenovo desktop or laptop, where it has the default username Lenovo. We can also see that, well, this project was actually compiled on their desktop, and it's called Xie Pro. So I believe this is an open source C2 framework. I don't know if it's still being developed these days, but last I checked, it was available on GitHub. This is another C2 framework written by a Chinese individual. Yeah, I can see that it's called client Go, or the Go client is stored under client Go, and etc. etc. Hello, people on YouTube. Give it a little bit. Exit here. I'm just gonna do 3 samples at most for this one, because this takes a little bit to run. Now we're pre-cached the IDV before stream, but that's assuming I'm smart. I'm not. Go. Screen size is small. Switch to a full stream. I believe you're watching the short stream right now. Yeah, you're watching a short stream right now. Switch to a full stream. You know, that's the best I can do on a 9:16 aspect ratio, which is a tiny main screen. Not much I can do there. Thank you for the 20 month, friend. Welcome to stream. Good morning. Right. Okay. So in this case, you can see that this project was being stored under Halil as LRAT. I assume that's L. Probably switch to a mono font, monospace based font. So. Do I have hack? No, do I have consolas at least? Thank you. There we go. LRAT. This one's mostly clean though. Once again, all of these can be forged and hidden away. once again, we'll talk about the actual obfuscation later. Why aren't you broadcasting in landscape mode? Check the channel. You're watching the wrong stream. We stream in dual stream mode. By we, I mean me. I stream in dual stream mode. So if you're watching on mobile, you're gonna find the vertical one first. If you're on desktop, you're probably gonna find the landscape one first. But either way, there are two separate streams. Go back to the channel and you'll find that there's a separate landscape stream. The portrait stream is pretty much only there for, you know, discoverability, because YouTube. It is what it is. Alright, let's move on to the next thing, which is code structure. Alright, this one is relatively short. Alright, so in this one we'll actually see... Well, first of all, we have something called Go Dirt Walk. That's not relevant to what I'm gonna be talking about. This one actually... I actually didn't recognize this as a Go file. Okay, give me a second. That's why we have a fallback thing for this. Well, actually, before I go on, so there are two ways you can go about parsing Golang strings, because the way Golang works is that all of these file paths are joined together. Sorry, by default, the way strings are handled in Go is that it doesn't do a delimiter, null-based delimiter after each string. So what you usually get, for example, if you're storing a string in most programs, you'll store it as hello world followed by a null byte. In Go, everything is joined together. When a string is to be used, what it does is that it basically fetches the string and then it just takes a certain length of it, and it stores the offset, and it stores the position, I believe. My bad, just discovering your channel, no worries. I mean, if you stumble upon the portrait stream, that means, I guess YouTube is doing its job. But somehow the portrait streams actually get way more discoverability than landscape streams. Alright. So yeah, there are two ways you can go about parsing the Golang strings. You can either use floss. Floss handles Golang strings relatively gracefully. You can also just use a very hacked together method of doing this, which is what was this? AD4, which is using something like rip grep with a very specific pattern. What was that again? AD4D 460. Did I spell it wrong? AD4D 460. Okay, I have no idea where this sample is. Try a different sample instead. I mean, I could just pass the string in here. Hang on. I'm gonna have to do this a very complicated way. Because I don't have ESM enabled for this client. That means I can't just copy paste into the machine. Copy as path. Oh. Another one. Hang on. Oh, I should have just done this in one go. Come on. Technical difficulties. Don't you love them? Oh, don't close that. No. Eh. Well, not you. Wrong file. What? Hello? Oh, there it is. Yes. Oh, that's just the same thing. Okay. Anyways, in case in some cases where if, for example, IDA fails to rebuild the entire structure, you can still see that there are some references to how this project would be, what its structure is like, and if you're lucky, you might actually have the full dependency name and or the project name, including their Git repository URL. A lot of times, though, these names are actually decoys. If you try to go to this, it might not work, but there's a chance that it exists, so we can check right now. And you can see that it's actually a fast directory traversal Golang thing. This project actually exists. Let's move on to what else? Right, let's move on to Rust next. Right, so Rust has the same thing, same issue. Quote-unquote issue. Not really an issue, but like, same behavior, basically. Okay, so the way Rust strings work is that I believe there's these strings are relatively sequential. These strings are going to be right next to where it's being referenced, and the module is going to sit in that entire nearby memory area. And without actually scrolling that far, we can actually already see that, well, this person is compiling theirs under the username lightf. And we can actually see that, well, outside of that, if we do search with .rs, we'll see all the dependencies that were used in here. And occasionally you might also see their full project name in here as well. Occasionally. That's not guaranteed. If you see things like runner admin, that's normal. I believe that is the default. That's the default compilation environment for many of the Rust packages. Yeah, you can see the local. That's going to be a relative path. It's going to be not going to be an absolute path, but you'll see the relative path of how the code is laid out in their project folder. So it's under sources, source modules, etc., etc. So .rs is a quick way of finding things like this. So same thing, let's load up another Rust file. This one actually has a PDB for some reason. By the way, I'm actually seeing all of these at the same time as you guys are, because I haven't really looked through these samples myself. I just know that they have useful information to talk about inside. Possibly. So there's a chance that they might not actually contain anything useful or interesting. And that also shows what my thinking process is like whenever I stumble upon a sample I hadn't seen before. Same thing, .rs, we can see that, well, it has their username. It's stored under Abdella. And they have a main.rs. Doesn't seem to contain anything else. I assume this is the loader. Yeah, this is probably just the loader. I've seen many cases where Rust is being used as just a loader before. They'll use things like I forgot the exact name. I think it was mem.pe package or something, where you would load the PE in memory at runtime and execute it. And because it's Rust, a lot of people can't be bothered with looking through Rust. Let's switch to different music. This is good. This little EP. This is EP music. There we go. Okay. So, same thing again. You can also see that this is being compiled under someone's username whose name is Luca. I believe this stealer was also named Luca Stealer, probably because of this. And here we can see that even while looking at the code, we can already see that, well, there is a low relative file name exposure already. And we can see that, well, it possibly is a stealer of some kind. It probably steals from Chrome, steals from various messengers. So Skype. I don't know why there's Skype in current year, but okay. There's Element, so that is a matrix based client. Discord, this Discord. ICQ is. Do people still use ICQ? Steam. For some reason, Telegram is different from messengers. Okay. Sensitive data, Uplay wallets, etc., etc. You get the idea. So once again, this already tells us a few things. Now, this is outside of the scope of the of how you go about reversing Rust malware, but you know, these module strings are usually right next to the place that it's going to call the thing. So you can just extract from here and go back to the relevant module. So these strings are actually very useful. All right. Let's move on to something a little bit more different. So we've seen all the different compile executables. Well, what about other artifacts that might be used in an operation? Well, let's talk about documents, because this doesn't get talked a whole lot about. People usually focus on just the malware, but the thing when it comes to investigation is that, well, you guys investigate every single bit, right? So, including how they got here. So, usually the initial access. So, things that people will sometimes forget about is investigating the actual source of how they got infected, or clues about that might tell us more about the victim. So either it's an email, or if it's an artifact that malware developer has used as part of the lore. So here we have 4 different documents. We're gonna use, remember EXIF tool that we used earlier that shows us things like the GPS coordinates? Well, we use the EXIF tool to show us the same thing. Not that, this. So, well, I'm not gonna actually open the lore PDF files themselves because one, they're not relevant. Well, okay, they are kind of relevant, but like, not the scope of what I'm going to be talking about. If you're an investigator, be sure to open the documents because the documents usually tell you more about the victim. But in this case, I don't know if these are TLP white enough for me to be opening them on stream. At the very least, I can show you the metadata, which I think should be fine enough. Anyways, so first off, we can see that, well, it's a PDF, and it has the language ENGB, and we can see that it was last modified 2022-05, and this tells us roughly the timestamp as well, and when exactly attack may have taken place. Because usually what they'll do is they'll usually have the decoy documents like relatively new, or sometimes either write the actual decoy document themselves. Sometimes they'll steal it from the victim, so it doesn't necessarily mean that this is when exactly the attack took place, but we can roughly estimate it's probably around 2022 May. Well, you can also see that it has the +2 timestamp, which is probably somewhere in Europe. Same thing, layer. All right, let me answer this first. Where do you get samples to analyze from, except for your work? You just take most stuff from Bazaar, starting out with malware analysis, looking to start doing something actually interesting to the community. Also curious where I should look. What can I do? Do you have any suggestions? So, for these, for the samples I talk about on stream, they're usually TLP white. So they're usually from places where you can actually download the samples freely. Whether it's gated behind a login or not, as long as it's free for people to access, I believe that's considered TLP white. Now, for the samples I'm featuring today, I think it's a mix of green and white. But they're not sensitive enough for it to be a problem, I think. Besides, we're not actually reverse engineering them today. But yes, the samples I do feature on stream are typically TLP white, and so they're sourced from places like abuse.ch. But if you're just starting out, I can also just suggest looking on places like, I believe VX has a relatively large sample repository that is also categorized by paper. I'm not really sure, but like they have quite a few samples that were considered green, but now they're now considered white now because they're relatively easy to get with free without any sign up required. So yeah, those are the main two places I look if you don't have any resource for accessing the samples. For any .run, I believe you can also download a sample if you're logged in, which is it's free sign up, if I remember correctly. I believe it's the same for hybrid analysis. I don't know if I haven't checked those two places in a while. I don't know if they're white these days. Missed an hour, gained 1 hour VOD. Hell yeah. Welcome, Dinah. But yes, if you're just starting out, I would recommend just looking around, looking through the samples, open the IDA, read papers, etc., etc. By papers, I don't mean like academic papers, but like, you know, reading public reports, OSINT Intel report, etc., etc. Those are places that should be easy enough for you to get started with. And also have a Twitter account on hand, because most people post on Twitter. I also consider infosec.exchange. That's also a place where people post their findings, but I don't check there as often because I don't have a habit of opening Mastodon very often. By the way, I do post over at infosec.exchange. It's an approval-based following system in there for my account. So if you follow me, I'm gonna have to approve it. But otherwise, yeah. I have an account over at infosec.exchange/@still. Anyways, let's get back to the document thingy. I'm just gonna see it in here. Okay. Yep. That's not what I meant. Here we go. So, Okay, so this one, we can see that, well, 2025, this one actually doesn't have a whole lot, but what this does tell me is that, well, I'm not going to open it, once again, I'm not going to open the actual document itself, but, you can see that there is a total edit time of 1 minute. So what this tells me is that the contents are probably copy-pasted. They probably didn't spend too much time in here. And a lot of times you'll find that it's either from existing news source, or these days more probable is that they'll have LM generate something very convincing for a news article and then paste it in there. Because a lot of directors are getting lazy these days. They can't even copy paste news. They'll just have LM do it because that's somehow faster. And probably more authentic, quote unquote, somehow. Alright, that's the same thing that we saw earlier. Alright, well, this one we can see that there's an author field. Author field is also another thing that we'll pay more attention to because a lot of times, if directors are using their own computers, this is why you usually have their username on there by default anyways. And the language field, once again, it's actually kind of important to watch out for this field because sometimes the contents will be, like for example, in Vietnamese, but the language field actually shows ZHCN or something like that, which shows that it was being written on a Chinese computer as opposed to a Vietnamese computer. Things that don't really align with things that are inside. And once again, for the modified date, you can see that there's a geocode. There is a time zone appended to this, so that's +3. Ow. Sip. Okay. Last one. Yeah, see, so in this one we can see that, well, there are a few interesting tidbits here. Well, first of all, you can see the author is actually Python.x. So by default, if you write a file with the Python.x package, this is what it'll come up as. For those unfamiliar, Python.x is a Python package you can use to create and modify, create a new document or modify existing documents with the Python package. What's interesting is that you can also see the producer was actually done with LibreOffice, and I'll tell you which tool created as well. And sometimes most people don't really change their environment, so this producer string can actually be used as part of an attribution as well. Not always, because there are going to be tons of people that are using the same LibreOffice version. But like if you just see other properties that look very similar to this, you might be able to at least deduce it down from other clues whether or not this is from the same actor. So LibreOffice equals TA? No, not necessarily. I know you're just joking, but like, you gotta, a lot of times with these different clues, you gotta like deduce it down to whether or not this is an actual possibility. But a lot of times people won't update their LibreOffice. For example, you might see, especially if they're being created in a sandbox environment, they usually don't update their software suite, so they might be using a very old version of LibreOffice. This is one thing. Also, certain actors really love to use LibreOffice instead of Word because they can't be bothered installing the full Office suite. Or they'll install WPS Office if they're a freak. What do you think are ways to contribute to a community to do anything useful? I don't know, picking up new CTI sample CTI people discovered, analyzing and writing a report. Do people actually care? I guess not. Not really, because I think that's a bad assumption that your reports don't matter. They do, because we do believe it or not, we do actually read reports from public places. If you see a sample that no one's done a write-up for, I think that's actually pretty good if you can write up about it and then make a write-up about it, because eventually we're going to stumble upon them and we might use them as a reference, or in general, I think it's a good place to A, practice, B, also get a little bit more rep. It shows you what you know about reverse engineering, shows you what you know about threat intelligence, and see, it's just in general a good thing to have, because you might be helping others that are looking at the same sample. You might have solved something or discovered something that other analysts hadn't before. Because believe it or not, analysts, including me, we miss things. And a lot of times having peers, reports from peers would show us that, hey, here's this thing you might have missed. Obviously, there might be the other way around as well. Sometimes the report might be missing things, but I don't think that really matters. I think it should just show whatever you find is interesting and list it on your write-up. I think that's good enough, really. Something to CV if you wanted to get a job in the field. Yeah, I mean, when I first applied, I showed them my Emotech write-up report and DL search order thing, which, in retrospect is relatively basic these days, but I think it's nice to write down things you didn't know, because it also shows you, it's a time capsule of what you did know and what you didn't know at the time. Having helping peers, pair is cool. Pair. Same thing. Alright. Next up, let's see. So next up, I want to talk about build timestamps. So, this is something I actually hadn't mentioned before, but you, eagle-eyed viewers might have seen it. When I load up the file, if I open up the file header, you actually see that, this one doesn't count, you'll see that there is something called a timestamp field. Alright, so, in every compiled executable, there's going to be a little timestamp field that tells that the compiler is going to write to. It's going to tell the people looking at this, and it's going to tell them, hey, when exactly was this piece of executable compiled? Now, this is called time date stamp. This timestamp field is used for two purposes. So one, it stores the current compile time. Who's going to look at that? I don't really know, but for us, we're going to look at that to figure out when exactly this piece of malware may have been written or prepared. Usually it's a week before the actual attack, or sometimes a few days, or even on the same day as the attack. Now this timestamp field it's actually used for something else as well. So instead of writing a compilation timestamp in here, this field can also be exchanged for something called a reproducible hash. So in the MSVC linker, you can tell the compiler, or you can tell the linker, compiler, technically different things, but for the sake of simplicity, let's just call it compiler. You can tell the compiler that, hey, instead of putting the current date in here, I want to put a hash in here. And so it's going to be a short, I believe, CRC32 hash of the rest of the executable. So this is if you turn on the feature called repro. This is a option you can pass to the linker. It's going to be /b repro. Put it in there. Then what's going to do is it's going to put the reproducible hash inside that timestamp field. So we're going to get to why that's important later, but for now, let's just assume that this is factual or something. And we can see that, okay, so this was compiled in 2024. This was compiled in 2025. this was compiled in 2026, etc., etc. And from these timestamps, we can actually use this to infer, well, we can find out when exactly the executable might have been built. We can also figure out, well, if you have a series of samples, when put together with a series of samples that you know are from the same attacker, what we can do is we can build a histogram of all of these different samples and figure out, okay, when exactly do they compile their samples? Is there a pattern to this? Usually what they do if they're an employed, if they're an employed red team company, they usually work during the work hours. So with this, alongside other clues, like for example the lore or other things like PB path, you might be able to infer what language they use. Okay. In addition to that, if we build a histogram of all these different timestamps, what we can tell is, well, okay, so we can see that they start these samples. They're usually compiled between, like, let's say 11 to like 7 or something like that. For example, 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And now, of course, these timestamps, they don't come with, they're technically an epoch timestamp. So like they're not something that has the time zone information inside. But for example, if there are other clues that might tell you their time zone, then we might be able to also add that into a plot. But like, what I'm saying is all these timestamps will usually be grouped together in a way that can tell you, okay, when exactly might their working hours be, when can we expect the next one to be released, or what their work hours are like. That is one piece of information. Anything? I don't think anything a noob like myself writes will be interesting. Jokes aside, it's difficult to pick what I should analyze, what's even worth writing, because there are 100, 500, 100,000 samples appearing every day. So this is also something that that is true. You have to differentiate between, okay, what's exactly a sample that I'm interested in. So, but if you're just starting off, don't worry about that. Just pick a sample that looks interesting, or if someone's done a write-up on it, that's fine. Just look at it anyways. Figure out what you can figure out. Like, don't look at the report at first. Try not to rely on existing information. Try to figure out things on your own. And then compare and contrast your report against theirs. Or if there isn't already a long wrap report of this, well, write it up anyways, because others will stumble upon it. And don't worry about whether or not your reports are quote-unquote professional. It doesn't really matter. The whole point is that you have to start somewhere, right? You don't start doing things you're not going to learn. Is your report going to be 100% factual and or trustworthy? Not necessarily, but that's fine. People who are reading the report will be able to pick apart and figure out which part makes sense, which part doesn't. If they're nice about it, they might also tell you, hey, this doesn't look right. And you can learn from that experience as well. At least that's what I would say for independent researchers. If you're working for a company and if you publish a report to your customers, my suggestion, my view on this is actually drastically different. If you're writing for a big company, you're publishing these reports to your customers, do not write anything that you don't know, that you're unsure of. If you're uncertain of a certain fact, don't claim it as a fact. Just, if you don't know if that's what you're writing is true, don't write that part. Just focus on things you're actually confident with. That's my advice for people that are writing for big companies, because I had previously seen reports from big companies where they just don't make any sense. I forgot whose report was it. I think it was Checkpoint. There was, don't quote me on this, but like, there was some report from a big company that I read, and I was just like, what are you guys writing? What? This doesn't make any sense. And like, I couldn't find anyone that I can actually contact for correcting the information they had in there. They were writing nonsense like, oh, this gibberish can actually be translated into Chinese. And as a native Chinese reader, and looked at that part, and they're just making up facts. Like, the decoded things were actually gibberish, and they were trying to play that as a fact, play this off as a fact. That, hey, this can be translated into Chinese, but I look at it, it's clearly not Chinese. It's clearly not something readable. It's gibberish. What are you guys doing? Anyways, I'm going off on a tangent here, but like, for a small beginner, don't worry about it. Just write whatever. If there are mistakes in it, someone stumbled upon it, someone's gonna tell you, hopefully in a nice way, tell you about it, and you can fix it in the future. Alright, anyways, right, so remember how when we popped this in here, that showed a unique ID for reproducible build? So yeah, this is something that this is why I really like panalyst. Panalyst will actually go ahead and check if what's in the timestamp field, whether or not if it's a reproducible build, and actually go ahead and hash the entire executable, or at least the part where it matters, and then see if, hey, if it's a vtuber enabled flag, enabled build, see if that hash checks out. That is one way of going about obfuscating the time date stamp as well. I believe this is also stored in, well, in certain builds, if you have debug on, actually I don't think you even need debug build on, but like in certain builds, you might have Pogo directory under the debug directory as well. The Pogo directory is also going to contain the current timestamp, build timestamp in there, so you can actually verify. Usually by default, if vtuber is enabled, the Pogo timestamp is going to be the same as the date stamp build, but you can use that as another way to check if it was forged. So check in the file header and then check the debug Pogo directory if there is one. I don't believe I have a sample that has Pogo in here. Let's check. Oh, this one actually has Pogo directory. I don't think it by default checks that. Not sure. The fastest way I'd usually check is with 010. To install this. Thank you. Executable. Debug directory. Yeah, I'll have the timestamp field in here. Unfortunately, panalyst doesn't expose that in the... Yeah, it doesn't expose that, so I'll have to use 010 for this. But yeah, you can see that there is going to be a timestamp here. There's also going to be a timestamp in the debug directory. So, well, usually, in some cases, I would say it's not super often, but like in rare cases where people do actually modify this file header timestamp, a lot of times the actual real timestamp will actually still be present in the Pogo directory because they forgot to change that part. Because most people just know to change this one, but not the other one down here. And I can show you guys a little nifty tool that I have. Don't think I'll be open sourcing this, but I have a little nifty tool that I use to determine whether or not to give me a quick read on samples. I have this little get sample hash. You guys might have accidentally saw it earlier. I have this little thing that tells me things about the particular executable. So it'll give me all the hashes, it'll give me the module name, assembly name, full PB path, it'll also do a signature check, and it'll also give me p timestamp as well. If we choose some of these from earlier, okay, that is not. Okay, do we have a better one? This one? Yeah. So it'll be able to tell me things like whether or not the p timestamp is legit. And also give me things like the version info, PDB, etc., etc. This is how I usually start off, beginning to analyze each sample. The concept of B-repro doesn't exist for .NET assemblies, so unfortunately this won't tell me whether or not this was forged. By the way, it still tells me the timestamp regardless. Okay, and next up, right. I don't have the files to back this up, but so far what we've gathered is, well, we have PDB path, we have Golang file path exposure, we have Rust file exposure, we also have timestamps, but everything I've discussed thus far, they can be faked. All of it. So, like I hinted at earlier, timestamps can be manually rewritten. I can just open up the file and just start changing the date. For example, I don't know, maybe I compiled this in 2024 or something. Oh, wait, files read only. Try a different file. Yeah. I might have compiled this on... Okay, that doesn't count, because that is a reproducible hash. Okay, this again. Right. Yeah, I can change that value if I wanted to. I can also change the one down here if I want to, because I can just open up a hex editor and change things at will. Doesn't matter, because these are not crucial to whether or not this application runs. As long as the actual relevant code is still there, the operating system knows how to run it. These surplus information are just surplus. They're extras. Actually running it doesn't matter. Doesn't care about all of these. So obviously we can also go in here and just do this if I want to, as demonstrated earlier with the Mustang Panda samples. So do this, yeah, and save it, run it, it'll still work. So why does all of this matter? Well, a lot of times I mention these because, well, clearly, not all of the attackers remember to remove these information. So, we can do vtuber. So I'm also going to talk. I'm going to talk about how you might go about evading from detections or evading people from looking around in your sample. Real quick, I'm not going to be talking about. I'm not gonna go through all the methods they can go about doing this, but here are some. For example, as I said, You can also do debug none, which turns off. To turn that off. I believe it's none. Don't quote me on that. It's either debug no or debug none. I can never remember. You should just choose it in Visual Studio anyways. You can also go in there and change things yourself. Now, what about the paths, exposure paths I was talking about earlier? Well, like I said, you can also change things yourself, or you can use the lazy way, obfuscation. But this won't really solve the issue, because if the obfuscator all it does for the obfuscator attackers is they just actually load the final payload that you generated, then it doesn't matter because your final payload is also going to have the same information, same metadata anyways. But for some obfuscators, they might also go ahead and obfuscate all the strings that are found in there. But once again, you're not actually removing the strings, you're just obfuscating them away. They can probably sometimes be restored. So don't use as the end-all solution. Try to remove the actual paths from, try to limit yourself to the actual path exposure as much as possible. Preferably try to use paths that are most commonly found in various samples. If you're not a blue team researcher, this might not be too obvious for you. A lot of times we know when we're looking for, but the attackers don't. So I think one way you can go about doing this is you can fire up your own sample in IDA and actually check it out, see if there's anything you probably don't want in there, and figure out how to remove that information you don't want. Or try to use a path that is extremely common, that's going to muddy the water when it comes to actually retro hunt samples. That's going to make it more difficult for the researchers to figure out what samples is yours and what is others. Sip. What's next? Right. Next up, I want to talk about false flags. Before that, I'm out of tea. I'm gonna go downstairs and grab some. I'll be right back. All right, I have returned. Okay, so sorry, excuse me. Right. Okay. So, we've talked about how all these data can actually be forged, and therefore you should not necessarily trust them, but use them as a clue of some kind. You know, good researcher researcher doesn't really take one clue and then pinpoint that as a fact. You gotta use like multiple different clues, combine them into a bigger picture, and see which of the clues actually make sense together, which of them don't. Now, here's the problem. Well, actually, let me write down what I just said first. Okay, here's the problem. Because everything can be forged up until this point, in addition, there are so many other things that an attacker can use to forge their attacks. There was this quick report that I do want to quickly cover real quick. So this was back in VB 2016. This was from Kaspersky, which basically describes, okay, so here are all of these different clues that we gathered thus far. I'm now moving on to something that is more threat intelligence, general, specific, rather than just talking about the malware and how they're leaking things. But basically, what I've said thus far, all of them can be used as false flags. And if you use your false flags strategic enough, you can use them to fool the person that is researching your group. And in this report, they actually talked about multiple things, like, for example, the well-nutrient group. You're like, believe they had like multiple different targets, and none of them actually really made any sense. A lot of times when you see a attacking group, they'll usually be very hyper-fixated on certain industries and their countries. But in this case, you can see that, well, it's a shotgun spread. It's many different countries and victims. And in the strings, they'll usually also have like multiple languages that point to multiple things. And the same thing can be applied to everything that we just talked about, including the PDB path and the actual timestamps. They can be used to either mimic a completely different country. The lore might be written in a setting that is different from the person that is actually doing the attacking. I think this is going to be especially more prevalent now that AI is a thing now, because anyone can write in different languages very fluently, I would say, these days, with the help of AI agents. And yeah, I would say give this report a read. Just look up BB 2016 false flag. You should be able to find a copy that's on Kaspersky's website. But when I did try to open this URL, apparently it didn't work, so I had to use Web Archive. But yes, go give this report a read if you're interested. But basically, the gist of it is that everything is a clue. Nothing should be used as a definitive fact. And I think that's about it. I can technically talk about the strings as well, but like, it's also kind of covered in this report. Basically, the idea is that sometimes they'll leave strings in there that's going to tell you what country they're from. For example, we did quickly cover this earlier. Some of the PDB strings actually contained pinging writings of various red team related strings like postal exploitation, Trojans, etc., and things like that in the strings. Sometimes they'll also include strings from other languages as well. I think Mustang Panda has done that once or twice. They love to do like random Easter egg strings in their loaders. But yes, I'm gonna link this in chat. Actually, can't find it. I had it open. I closed it. Often do you encounter malware that exploits vulnerabilities? I wouldn't say too often. At the same time, though, at the same time, I also don't think I can talk about it. Well, I would say I can't really talk about them in detail, but like, I wouldn't say not often. You'll often see that they use them for initial access, and that's about it. They don't usually use, well, I would say occasionally, not frequent, or not often. Like, not often enough that it's rare. So occasionally, basically. This will actually be fine. Posted twice on there we go. Yes. Even encounter a 0-day exploitation? Yes. We have seen 0 days. But once again, I can't talk about that because that's a very sensitive topic that if I do talk about it in detail, I'm pretty sure my company will yell at me again. But yes, that is a thing that we do occasionally run into. Report them is always a hassle though, because I'm usually not the one in charge of reporting things, so I actually know what the procedure is like, but like they usually take a little bit of time. But yes, we do run into 0 days sometimes. Alright, I think that about wraps up today's topic. So once again, let's go through everything once again. So the most important things when it comes to initial assessing of a sample, look at PV strings, look at the timestamp, look at strings inside, if it's a Golang or REST related things, find their local path first. You usually use them as an anchor. You can use all of these information as a anchor for help you retro hunt. And once again, do not take any of these as definitive facts. Use them as a clue. Alright, now, I'm gonna close out these. Technically, that's a stream over. But I do wanna, well, first of all, gather some feedback. This is the second episode where we changed up the format since the last one. So the last one was the first one that I started off with talking about Yarrule and hands-on experience writing those. This time, I'm talking about samples that had already previously gathered, and talking about various topics that can be stemmed from them, specifically the attribution, PDB, paths, etc., etc. I don't know if this format works. So if anyone's here, I would like your feedback. How was this episode? Was this educational? How does this compare to previous episodes where I usually just open up a sample and then figure out what it does? Because I think there's still some value in that. The problem is it's not very followable for newcomers. I think this method touches on educational topics a lot more, and people actually learn a thing out or two out of these. But it's a time prep. I had to sink several hours researching and finding samples I can use for today's stream. B, it's technically not as exciting, but at the same time, there are an inadvertent risk of finding samples, figure out what it does, because sometimes you might end up with samples that aren't very entertaining to look at. So yeah, I do want to gather some feedback on this. Anyone's here, tell me how you feel about the stream. Started watching since a previous episode, so I can't compare. That's fine. Came in midstream. It was more graspable than our workshop 28. Okay. So that means 29 and 30 are working. As an ex-malware dev, find these entertaining and educational. Okay. Good. Now I suppose the next question would be, what next? Because eventually I'm going to run out of things to talk about if we follow this format, I think. There was a request for me to talk about looking at VM-based or heavily obfuscated or LLVM obfuscated samples, but I don't feel like I'm an expert enough at that topic to be talking about it or showing my approach. I don't think I don't have the necessarily best approach for it. I do think 29 and 30 has worked in the way that it's attracting people that are new to the topic and explaining them in a way that's hopefully understandable, or at least more beginner friendly. At the same time, though, I feel like this episode is definitely more technical in depth than the previous. Some novel malware technique, like SDADA, one malware that used a technique where it had one function, everything recursive, including callbacks. The thing is, right? So that could work. At the same time, though, I feel like things that are too novel aren't going to be super practical to talk about, because like the most practical advice generally come from malware that I actually see a lot. Things that would apply to your day-to-day reverse engineering techniques. Not that that's not bad. That's a bad idea or anything. I also have to consider what novel ones can I talk about. Because keep in mind, we have a restriction that we have to use white samples only. I have basically vowed to only talk about white samples. I can't disassemble, decompile anything that's green or above. Well, okay, green has a little bit more leniency, but like amber or above, definitely not. And right now I'm kind of aiming it for it to be like one every month at minimum. I think we've done like 2 in like a month in the last 30 days. I try to keep it sparse, mainly because, okay, not necessarily because I want to, but A, these take time to prepare. B, my weekends are usually so full of other things. So that's why I kind of keep it sparse. I also try to keep it on weekends because that's when most people are available. Also, I hope the time actually works out this time, because like usually I would do. So another thing I changed up about the formatting is that I moved it to the usual stream hour of 10 p.m. which for European audience will be afternoon. Unfortunately for US based viewers, that's gonna be morning. But I think it works a lot better for me to have a more quality stream, because if I move it to the morning, okay, that means US viewers are gonna get to watch it before sleep. But EU viewers won't be able to catch it, and Asian viewers probably also not. And I would also be a lot more groggy. I might not be able to make it on to stream on time. So I think the current time actually still works out. I hope. I'm curious how to catch persistent malware activity like BOS and trace it, as opposed to initial execution. Maybe you can talk about that. Here's another thing though. I don't think I'm familiar enough with BOF necessarily in the moment, because my expertise would be like, you know, post IR scenario, where we already have the memory dump. We can talk about things like that. Damn, not too much of it. So the thing with Art Workshop is I only talk about things that I'm confident enough to be talking about. Things I'm not less confident about, I usually try not to show. I think the main exception being that app-bound encryption stuff that we talked about like way long ago when it was new in Chrome. That one I was a little bit less afraid of showing off that how stupid I am sometimes. But yes, okay, that's one thing I can also think about. Yes. Alternatively, we can also work on trying to write a config parser. You know, stupid. Have you seen the AB episode? I was doing some really stupid things in that episode, like trying to write a C++ program where I have like zero experience with C++. I was just making like stupid mistakes. But I suppose that's also quote-unquote entertaining to people. I think we can work on a malware config parser one next. I'm sure you guys will write a malduck config extractor and how you go about anchoring things down and writing things for it. That being said, I was fine writing a config parser to be kind of annoying to do, but I think that would be a valuable piece of information if you're a researcher. At the same time, though, I also kind of want to... You guys are gonna hate this, but YouTube Shorts idea is based. Yeah, I think that one worked out really well in the previous one. I really need to edit more of those because I actually kind of like the previous shorts as well. I banged that out in like the afternoon or something. But yes, back to what I was saying. You guys don't hate this, but I also kind of want to try to attract the normie audience a little bit, because like the idea of Art Workshop was to make it like so simple, understandable, and entertaining enough that people new to this will be able to understand things. So that's also kind of why the previous episode was like really quote-unquote dumbed down, I think. Was it? I mean, I feel like it was pretty much approachable for anyone new to threat hunting, right? The what? The normies. The people that don't do reverse engineering. So here's the thing, right? I've always found things like... I forgot their name. Was it a Hunter or something? The person that does like... the person that does technical behind the scenes for Animal Crossing. I always found their way of presenting complicated matters into like very simple very simple, understandable, anyone could understand type of deal. I think I always found videos like those to be fascinating because I'm entertained by it. B, clearly normal people are watching the videos, and I think that works very well. It was approachable, yeah, but that's the goal, so if it's okay if it brings people, yeah. I also have a video idea that I had in mind. I might actually start working on it at some point. So I actually have like a rough script laid out. I want to do a video on Lazarus's recent technique that uses git hook to fool developers into executing malicious code. I want to do it in a way that's like so basic I never even talk about the code itself, but like simple techniques where it's like, okay, I don't talk about the malware itself, I talk about the actual execution itself, how it was done, how average developers fall for it. I think that'll be a very fun video to work on. I have a rough script ready, but I need to revise it. But that's like YouTube stuff though, not like stream stuff. With that being said, that also needs time to work on. I already have like so many other things I gotta work on. By the way, speaking of other things, cover projects. I don't know when was the last time I talked about it, but I just got a storyboard draft. The cover, that's currently work in progress. It's gonna be done soon, hopefully by the end of the month. And then another one that's still pending current first visualization draft. Aside from that though, a lot of private stuff I gotta do as well. I think I'll have the most downtime for September, because I don't think I have anything planned for September. Back in my day, VS pre-build execution was commonly used too. I believe that was used by Lazarus at some point as well. No, the whole solution based backdoor execution, where upon a solution load, you'll run things automatically. Lazarus, sorry, the same group, the same crypto group, they had used things like using VS Code task launch. It's also one way to do it. The most recent one, they moved on to the Git hook based one, so they would convince the developer to switch to a different branch, and there's a post checkout script that would run as a Git hook mechanic, and it would automatically run when you switch branch. I want to talk about that one because I think that is a entertaining story on its own, and I think the one that actually deserves the attention of average developer as well, because right now it's the most average developer that's falling for it, and you know, the most technical minded people that most people would think, oh, I'm not stupid enough to fall for it, but they fall for it anyways. That's another thing. That's why I want to talk about it. Anyways, I'm gonna have a think about the next art workshop. That probably won't be until mid-September though, because I'm gonna be away this weekend. Well, actually only until Saturday. Actually, speaking of Saturday, so if you're Taiwanese that's currently watching this, Friday, we're gonna be selling merch at FF. Saturday, I'm gonna be at HitCon, so anyone wants to see me at HitCon, I don't know, try to, if you see someone with like tail merch, it's probably me. I'll probably also do a HitCon lightning talk as well if I could, because there are only like 5 slots. I was gonna do it last year, but by the time I arrived, that slot was already full. If I could, I'm gonna talk about things. And then I don't know if there's gonna be any stream on Sunday, depending on how tired I'm feeling that day. And next week is gonna be Magical Mirai, so I'm gonna be gone through Friday to the next Monday. So like end of August, I'm not gonna be around. And then September, I'm gonna be totally free. I think. I don't think anything lined up for September. At best, I might visit my friends and family. But like, I don't think I have anything else planned otherwise. Maybe we can talk about anti evasion. How to make malware run if it doesn't run or want to run. I don't know how common this problem is though. I'm not sure if you already have a stream on that. I might have a stream on that, but it could use a refresher anyways. I don't remember I have a dedicated stream for that, but like I think I have talked about the technique a few times. But I think having an own dedicated stream that talks about evasion and things like that would help as well. So I think that's good. That's a good topic actually. Yeah, I would say actually I think that might be the next one actually. We can talk about that next because I think it actually works out very well because I don't want to just document things about how things might not run on your system necessarily, but also talk about anti-sandbox techniques that many of the malware use. Because a lot of them pretty much use the same technique, or at least similar enough, that basically prevents automatic things from being automatic triaging, sandboxing, analyzing to be run on their sample. I think that's a good technique. You can also just use a normal machine. I mean, yeah, but at the same time, because it also uses a very well disguised machine. For some reason, a lot of the spoiler. I don't see a lot of malware specifically going out of their way to detect Hyper-V machines for some reason. Most of them just target VMware and VMware and VirtualBox. At worst, QEMU, but that's about it. But like all the QEMU methods, that can also kind of be easily patched if you're running with KVM. So yeah, I think I think that's a good candidate actually for next time. With that being said, I will also have to do a little prep because I'm gonna have to find samples that do anti-evasion or like and evasion, where we can do show-off anti-evasion techniques or anti-sandbox. I'd also be more interested in finding more normie quote-unquote samples. Remember how a few streams ago we used to do things that are like blatantly malware? People fall for it anyways because people don't know, people aren't educated enough on certain topics. For example, the whole hey, I have a project coming up. Can you I got homework I handed today. Can you run this real quick? Test it for me, see if it works. That kind of thing on Discord. We had talked about those before, but I think looking at more samples of those would also be nice. That's pretty much similar to the older format though. But if I can present it in a way that's like more approachable, I think that would be nice. Who's streaming right now? Not a lot of people. I don't know, by the way, speaking of, I don't know if I'm gonna have any con to attend to this year. I don't think I have anything prepped for the second half of this year. I might have a con talk sometime next year. I don't know, but like, I kind of miss doing talks already. I'm gonna be featured at one of the talks earlier next year, but like that's about it. I haven't figured out if there are any cons I can do. Our DEF CON ticket costs like 20,000 this year. So here's the thing, right? I always thought DEF CON is kind of overrated. Well, first of all, it's more red team focused, which is not something we do. They aren't really interested in threat intel side of things, so I don't have a reason to go to that there. A few people had previously asked me if I'm gonna be at DEF CON. The answer is usually no. In fact, I've never been to DEF CON. First of all, because it's in US, it's a little far. And if there isn't a reason for me to go there, the company won't send me there. We usually don't have anything red team to talk about anyways. At best, we go to black hat conferences, but here's the thing, we kind of stopped trying for the black hat conferences. Like when I'm talking about things like Black Hat USA, Black Hat Asia, we stopped going to those mainly because we also found that they're not particularly interested in what we want to talk about. I think in the earlier days of my career, I tried submitting 3 papers. Sorry, tried submitting one paper, multiple papers of similar themes. Tried like 3 years in a row, never got in. So I just the conclusion we got was that it wasn't really worth it to submit for Black Hat specifically, so we started going for more like threat intel specific cons. So things like Code Blue, what else? It's more underground kind of cons, like underground economy, things like that, where it's like a little more but discreet, I would say, because like most people don't want to listen to what we have to talk about if it's not sensational enough. From what I've seen, on Twitter, latest DEF CON is a complete shit show. Don't think you've missed a lot, but I've never been to US DEF CON. Yeah, I saw. There was a whole people hacking plain Wi-Fi thing. I saw that as well. Hello, person on YouTube. But I think it would be interesting to go to DEF CON only for the sake of community interaction, really. Because if there's one thing I miss about going to the Western cons, is that you get to actually hang out with people you don't actually get to hang out from just online, right? I really enjoyed my last trip to VB, Virus Bulletin, in Germany, because I met a bunch of friends, mutuals that I had seen on Twitter and other places. What are you doing? We are pretty much done with the stream. We're currently just chatting. But if you're new here, you can check the VOD to see what we're talking about. We're talking about how Malware leaks their private information about the Malware developer. Like for example, back to the whole VB thing. I had a great time chatting with Russian Panda. Apparently, I think she goes by a different name these days. I think she dropped the Russian prefix. She's now she's now Panda or something. I had a good time chatting with her and her friends. And a lot of response I got was after hanging out was like, hey, when are you coming back to EU next time? Or when am I going to visit? Or when do I get to see you next time or something? I'm just like, I wish I could, but A, the flight is super long. B, I need to have a reason to show up here. And that's not something that's up to me to decide. That's for the company to decide, because I'm not gonna pay out of my pocket to fly over here, and for the ticket as well, and the PTO as well. So yeah, usually when people ask me if I'm ever gonna go back to certain cons, I'm like, yeah, it's not up for me to decide. It's only if I have a talk to talk about there. And I think the main reason for us to not go to EU cons as frequently was because I think the ROI was just too low for our company, because we don't have enough EU clients for that to matter, and this doesn't really convert to actual customer base. So I think we have a lesser reason to go to EU because of that. Cybersecurity, yes. About the sensational part, I don't think there's anything more sensational than 80% of the talks I've seen most of the time. It's just the same info repeated again and again. So I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing, and a lot of times these talks are actually very entertaining as well. You always learn new information about certain campaigns that you are either observing or not, new insight into the overall landscape and or exploitations, or things that are just really cool. Can you show your full model if possible? Okay, sure. Here you go. I'm tall or something. Why Russian Panda dropped Russian? Is she Russian? She's not. I think that's the main reason she dropped it. Because I think people are mistaking her as Russian because of that. I don't know her exact ethnicity, but she's probably US based. I don't think she's like mixed European, I think. I'm not sure. Either way, probably not of Russian origin. Probably. I don't know enough about her to actually determine that. I can't see it's out on my screen in YouTube Shorts. Hang on. Can I make this fit in the Shorts view? Hang on. Rare boost view? Yeah. There you go. Now it fits in the... For people watching the landscape view is probably going to be very confused, because this is how it looks on the Shorts portrait view. Like, I'm in full view on the portrait view, but like on a landscape view, it just looks like I'm floating. It's not a bad thing. Good educational material is just often the same thing, but very represented. Yeah, so another thing is that I have many things I want to talk about. The biggest problem is I can never package them in a way that's good enough for conferences. I think that's also the biggest challenge when you have to prepare something for conferences, because a lot of times the conference, they want something more quote unquote sensational, but like also not at the same time, because you don't want something that's like stupidly sensational, or at least for self-respecting conventions anyways. Mostly see these events as a networking thing. Yeah, I mean, we consider them a networking thing as well, because like we get to talk to vendors that we had previously not seen, or vendors that we are friends with, and that's a good thing. But the networking thing also has to make sense from a company side, because like realistically, is flying out 2 researchers with $3,000 each spent on them a worthwhile investment if we get like $0 back from the company's view? Not really. Yeah. So I can see it. Why I can see why our company doesn't want to fly us out. The flights are expensive. The hotels are expensive. Well, okay, no, the hotel is covered by BB. But ticket was expensive. I think. VB only offered a full ticket for one attendee. The other person has to pay for a ticket, and I think it's only like 80% disc. Sorry, I think it's only like 20% discount or something. And the full ticket is like thousands of dollars or something. Did you commission the model or made yourself? I did commission it. You can find more information about the models at my socials on Twitter or the link in the description. You're gonna be surprised the last Russian DEF CON I attended was $12 US. I'm actually not that surprised. I mean, some conventions are just ridiculously cheap, and some are just ridiculously expensive. I'm not gonna pay well, my company's not gonna pay several $1,000s for us to just go to one convention willy-nilly. They probably have to get something out of it, or like huge exposure of some kind. But I really enjoyed my time at BB. Germany was interesting. So there's unaware. We did last year. We did go to BB 2026. Sorry, BB 2025. To talk about a Chinese APT that was using Google Calendar as its C2. Good stream. Bye for now. I gotta go. All right, no problem. See you later. First on YouTube. So I think these days, our company tried to aim for cons that are like within a relative close vicinity. So like within Asia. So Singapore, Japan. I think that those two are the main ones. I can't really remember any other on top of my head, except the Taiwan ones. I believe we do consider Taiwan ones to be like relatively low on the tier scale, like, you know, because it's local. Everyone that knows us probably knows about it. Everyone that's in the industry, probably within the island, probably knows about this already. So less of a reason for us to go, unless we happen to have a thing that we think is worth talking about. I think we did try to apply for HitCon this year for talk, but I think we didn't make it in, unfortunately. Not me personally, some other colleague. My previous HitCon talk was a while ago. I think it was like 2024 or something. It was on Mustang Panda specifically. The group has seen quite a shift over the years, actually. Well, not quite a bit, but like a small size shift. And yeah, I can see what you're talking about. You know, it is how it is. You know, when it comes to these cyber stuff, some amount of politicalness is bound to make its way in here, and it is what it is. Politics and whatnot. This is a little bit out of nowhere, but I do want to reiterate my stance on my job specifically. I would rather lose my job if it means there's nothing malicious to look at. I would much rather if cyber espionage, country state sponsored attacks aren't a thing. I would rather be doing, I don't know, teaching English or some other things that are more mundane. It means no one's getting their data stolen. But no, that's a thing, and that's my job. That's something I have fun in doing, researching, but I'd rather not. It means that these things don't occur in the first place. But no, they are a thing, and therefore here I am looking at the samples. You know, someone did raise a interesting point on infosec.exchange the other day, which led me to say, I forget exactly what they said, but like, I responded in turn saying that, you know, it would be nice if I can actually sit down and talk to the malware developers themselves sometimes. Like, hey, why are you doing this? Why do you do the things that you do, or why did you make things this way, that way? How much are you making? Are you okay? Are you okay in the head? Because, like, okay, that sounds like a funny thing to say, right? But, like, if anything, all of these cyber firm leaks that have occurred in the last few years have told us is that a lot of them are underpaid. And they're just trying to make a living. And that's also why certain groups also sometimes take extra jobs where they have to make the ends meet. They start making ransomware on their own. They start ransoming victims that weren't part of their job. But, you know, they had to make money somehow. Things like that. Once I had talked with a criminal malware developer, he was not well in the head. He had depression. He was very angry at researchers. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. And a lot of times, certain red team developers that I've seen have had extremist view sometimes about researchers and or things like that. I think the Brute Ratel dev was one of those. Don't quote me on that, but like I've seen a lot of drama related to them. I don't think he likes people in general. Brute Ratel is a C2 framework that was popular for a little bit, and then it kind of died down. At least I think I haven't seen Brute Ratel used in a long while, or at least several years. Now, one is the GF1s. She was the most manipulative person ever. Put me in a horrible mental state. Sorry to hear that. Was trying to prove to me that researchers are stupid. I was trying to prove them wrong. Well, okay, that's actually the typical view of many malware developers. They think blue teams are stupid. They think we don't know what we're talking about. And a lot of times that's actually kind of true, because they're going to know more than we do, inevitably, in the field. They probably know a lot of things better than we do. That is objectively true sometimes. For example, if you talk to EDR, if you talk to a cheat developer, they're going to probably know more about the Windows system than most malware developer. And a malware developer is probably going to know more than an average blue team researcher. And so, that is sometimes objectively true that they do know better than we do, but at the same time, they do make mistakes as well sometimes. I don't want to like put either side down, because like, I think we have enough animosity between the two sides already. At the same time, though, we definitely have also seen malware developers that, threat actors that do very questionable things. I think the recent example that I talked about on Twitter was AutoCookie. It's a DPRK based malware that that's part of the contagious interview cluster. And it seems that these days they rely heavily on AI malware and the actual social engineering part, which is good, but their infrastructure is like, they don't really care. They're just kind of stapling things together and don't really care whether or not researchers find them. They're clearly not trying to be covert about it. Do you think researcher exposure is a lot larger than just one of the malware developer researchers just see more? So yes, that is true. We do know. The thing is, we know both sides has their own things that they know better than the other, right? Blue team researchers, they're gonna know what to look for in a malware. They don't necessarily have to know the details. They don't have to know how malware works from inside out. They just have to know, okay, here's the fact. Here's what it does. I don't care how it does it. It does it. And here's what the overall landscape is like for these guys. And on the other side, the malware developer is going to know more about the technical insights of how things work, right? I'm not going to be able to explain to you how threat pool injection works in detail. Well, I roughly know the rough draft of it, but like, I think a malware developer will be able to explain that a lot better than I do. Does that matter? Debatable. He was attributed to DPRK even though he was Russian, so angry about it. I think there's one thing I forgot to mention for the earlier part when I was talking about the PDB and whatnot, is that attribution is very hard. Misattribution is bound to happen at some point. So I think a lot of malware developers are going to laugh at us for what we do if we do get our investigation wrong. But I think they also have to understand we have a far limited scope. We're making our educated guesses that aren't necessarily true. We just think that this might be a plausible conclusion. And that's also another reason why no self-respecting researcher would say, I'm 100% sure this was a Chinese state-sponsored attack. Unless they have insider information about how the group works internally and they have access to their machine, etc., etc. But like, most people, they're gonna be like, okay, from all these information, I can guess that this is probably a Chinese-speaking or Chinese state-aligned actor. And I think that's how ESET aligns. ESET and Kaspersky, I think they both use a very similar threat attribution system where they say, okay, it's certain state aligned. They never say state sponsored. They never specifically go out of their way to say, okay, we know for sure this is like Chinese or whatever. They just say like it's DPRK RPC aligned group. And I think that's a much safer attribution sometimes. And if possible, I would like for our company to say the same thing, but that's not for me to decide. That being said, we also do know certain things that are like most definitively they are state sponsored in some ways, but like, you know, we're things we're less confident about. I think we should probably make that clear that we're less confident about certain things. But you know how it is. People have to package it in a way that makes it seem impressive. I don't get to decide what my report looks like to the customers. other people writing the reports that turns my findings into more human readable things do that, not me. And that's why, if you want to know more about certain things, always talk to a researcher instead of the people that are packaging it, because they're gonna know more than people that are talking to the media. And I think that's a general conclusion for many things, really, not necessarily just related to this field, but like, you know, people that are writing software, people that are making the hardware, etc. Talk to engineers and whatnot. That would usually be the most accurate. I need a quick little restroom break. I'll be right back. Alright, I have returned. So I was gonna raid people. We could do a little more chat. I'm thinking like a few more minutes and then we call it. Dumb question. How often do you write YARA rules for samples you encounter? It will be an indication that you should write a YARA rule for it. Because almost every sample on Malware so far is a hit. So at work specifically, if it's a sample that we're interested in, or if it's a sample that we know aren't, if it's a sample that doesn't have a ton of matches, like if we do a retro hunt and we see that okay, there's like only a handful, then we'll usually write a YARA for it. If it's a known Malware family, if it doesn't match any YARA rule, we definitely have to write a new one for it, because that means that there's a new strain that our rule doesn't catch. And so typically, maybe like most interesting samples that we run across, if it's something that I think it's worth chasing after, then we'll write a YARA rule for it, because that means we get to do a little hunt on it. And if it's a sample that's warned of being detected, like very popular stealers, we definitely have rule. We'll definitely write rule for things like Luma stealers, Steel C, etc., etc. But if it's like a very specific malware that we've done a retro hunt and we was like, oh, there's only like 2 or 3 out there. We usually try to write AR rule for it, unless it's something that's like so annoying to write AR rule for, like this heavily obfuscated sample. And if it's heavily obfuscated, we'll still try to write AR rule anyways, because even if it's heavily obfuscated, there's usually always a pattern present in there, despite it being obfuscated, because certain obfuscated samples, they'll usually have at least 1 or 2 patterns that look the same before that after it's being obfuscated. Like for example, the way, for example, certain calls are made. Sorry, excuse me. Like when you obfuscate a virtual analog, still gonna look that way if it's by the same obfuscator sometimes. I say sometimes because I know there are obfuscators that somehow generate a completely different result every time that obfuscators run through it. But, in easier cases, we can still try to write pattern for those. I mean, the same case also, what I just described was also how I accidentally flagged from a story I talked about last stream. I was trying to write a very complicated AR rule and ended up matching Chrome. Oops. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's anyone I can raid. That's unfortunate. I really want to raid someone. Guess it's too early in the day. By the way, there was a Skyrim stream yesterday I still haven't caught. I haven't checked the VOD Neuro. I think that this sleep schedule is gonna be fucked once again because I napped earlier and not really sleepy right now. Probably gonna be around for another few hours. It's fine. I've got a few things I gotta do anyways. No chat. I like more VTubers I can raid. That's really hard to find people that I vibe with. The only raid streamers I know are safe enough to raid. Ooh. Yeah, I gotta stop playing around with this chart. Dropping it. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this. My friend suggested me that there was another Taiwanese VTuber that speaks English relatively fluently. The thing is, I follow them on Twitch. I don't think they're ever live on Twitch. I think they stream exclusive on YouTube. I think that's unfortunate because that sounds like perfect someone to raid. Because I don't really raid my other Taiwanese streamer friends. Because, inherently we speak different languages. Or at least my audience versus theirs. So I do have a few Taiwanese friends of the channel otherwise. But I don't rate them because, Chinese speaking streams versus EM viewers won't necessarily work out. But the person I was talking about It sounds like it would make sense to raid, but yeah, I think they're YouTube only, fortunately. I don't think they use their Twitch account. Alright, I think I'm gonna work on the schedule next. Non-stream, like off-stream. And figure out what's for next week. I kinda wanna go back to Xenosaga again. I know we kinda played it off for like 3 weeks, and then we finally started doing one this week. I'm gonna do another one next week, hopefully. Because I'm actually interested in the story, see where it goes. Hello, yours. Alright, I'm gonna chat for another few minutes. I'm gonna hit that 3-hour mark, and I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna switch over to the just chatting view. Does that work? Oh, I forgot if I have the... Oh, that frame rate. Hello. Oh, there we go. I don't know what that frame rate is about. Gonna get the VM off. Wow, hello. 2% at once. Welcome to stream. We're just done with the main part of the stream. If you're here, welcome. If you're new here, welcome. For all the things you missed out, you can check the VOD. For now, just chilling, hanging out. I'm out of water again. I'm gonna get some downstairs. By the way, yeah, I'm still not consistently hitting that water intake goal. I think I'm only like hitting like average, like half of it. Yeah, right now my average seems to be around like 1.5 liters. Ow. Sip fluid? Oh man, I'm out. Okay, well, we'll be right back. I'm gonna grab some water. I'm just gonna leave it on here as supposed to be RB. Chat, I have huge news. Someone actually bought our merch, Standy, just moments ago. First sale. Woo. In case you don't know what I'm talking about, we have merch. But it's only available to Taiwanese viewers for now. What made the most impact? The amount of Twitter subs you have? I don't know. Twitter's algorithm is such a shit show. Like, it may seem that I have a huge amount of following on Twitter, but realistically, only like the engagement rate is actually very low. My tweets rarely get put into other people's views, and for the tweets that do blow up, I have no fucking clue how they blew up. Unless you do like clear rage bait or something, which I'm not interested in doing. Or if your view is somehow controversial. Like last tweet I did about my friend switching over to Linux. Somehow that tweet blew up. I don't understand. People think I was rage baiting somehow. When I said, I think the tweet went something like, you know, Microsoft did bad because my friend switched over to, my friend who barely know anything about computers switched over to Linux, which is an objective fact, by the way. They did switch over to Linux by themselves and was actively enjoying it. Specifically, it switches from SteamOS for like 2 months, and they're like, wow, this is great. I don't need to go back to Windows. And yeah, that tweet somehow blew up. Got like thousands of interactions, and people thought I was rage baiting. I was like, what? Huh? Twitter does put a handful of your stuff onto my feed though. The thing is, I don't really know how and why it does that. Like, what specific things get actually put onto people's feed, and how, whether or not people, it's something people are interested in. Because like, I do ramble a lot on Twitter, and not many of them are actually interesting things. In fact, if I compare myself to other content creator, it actually does seem like I ramble too lot on Twitter. Like, it almost doesn't look like a VTuber account, it looks like a personal account. Which, I mean, it kinda is. I kinda operate my VTuber account as a personal account where I put things down. The only time where something noticeable does happen. By the way, apparently the Twitter opened up their weights on what impacts a tweet. Apparently someone sharing the post is like the biggest impact one could do to the tweet. Hello, SCP. And I think the most drastic impact I can notice is when big accounts like my tweets. Like, it's very noticeable when before and after, like, for example, before and after Smelly likes my tweet, VX Underground. Usually after it's been liked by them, I'll see a lot of engagement rates after that, for that particular post. Or post liked by Veto. Somehow. He'll occasionally like my tweet if it's like neuro related. He doesn't do that very often though. But like, he's there sometimes, and I don't know, it's like it suddenly got pushed onto many people's timeline after that. Your accounts are confusing though in regards to the VTuber cybersecurity mix, especially on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, I understand because I'm very inconsistent in my topics, and I think the algorithm doesn't like that. It prefers that you do one thing and one thing only that your viewers are interested in. So it's gonna flip-flop between normie VTuber content and cybersecurity stuff. And most platforms don't like that. Not even just YouTube, like Twitter or Threads, etc. Like Threads, right? It seems to think that people like my vocal synth content more. And if I compare that to Twitter, Twitter seems to obviously like my cybersecurity content more, because that usually gets way more engagement than the others. So yeah, it's a shit show. It's, I don't know. You know how old is Smelly? I know he has a wife, sometimes talks about 80s stuff. I assume it's like 40s or 30s. I don't think he's like that old, but I also don't think he's like, I don't think he's middle-aged, but probably 40s. I don't think he's like hip enough to like be with a Gen Z and whatnot. Like he knows enough about the internet, I guess. I always imagine him to be in his 60s. I mean, he just had his kid not too long ago, so I have to assume it can't be later than 40s. Most people have their kids before 40s or 50s. So I have to assume it's like somewhere around that. I didn't know that. Yeah, he talks about his kid a lot sometimes. Well, not like the specific, but like we know he has a kid that's constantly crying and making a mess. So we can assume that that kid is probably like less than 5-year-old. And I think that's the main reason he doesn't do a lot of malware specific stuff these days anymore. He's like kick back, relaxing, kinda. Well, as much as you can relax with a kid around anyways. He's pretty mysterious though. I mean, we know he's US based. And he does talk to a lot of people. I wouldn't say he's mysterious, but it's just that he doesn't feel the need to share everything, which is good. Surprised how he's not getting doxxed. I mean, there's no reason for him to get doxxed. By threat actors, I mean, threat actors are kind of cool with him. They don't really care about him that much. Maybe I do. You know, I appreciate Smelly being around. I mean, before VX came around, and before abuse.ch came around, back when I started, there wasn't much wide resources you can go about looking. There really aren't any public sample pools or places that document papers very well. There was Malpedia, sure, but like Malpedia doesn't offer too much information to the general public beyond the catalog papers. For example, they don't make the YAR rules public. They don't make the sample pool public. A lot of them are either green or amber. There are some white ones, but like not very frequent. I know I just said I'm not sleepy, but here I am, yawning. Apparently Soy is streaming. I'll rate her later, after this. Checking out TW4 for merch. I hope it's not too expensive. Like, I hope at worst it's like $10 to get it shipped to you. If it's like more than that, talk to me if it's too expensive. Unsure which link in the Discord point to the merch though. I gotta make an account because I can't access it from here. So here's the thing, don't worry about it for now. I'll talk more about availability after the con. I don't imagine that'll sell out. In fact, I don't imagine selling more than 5 copies. I don't think people know me well enough to be like, oh wow, this VTuber with like less than 3,000 subs has merch. Wow. They're so cool. I can't wait to get their merch. I don't think there's more than 5 people that are going to be interested in that. But, regardless, shipping isn't a problem. It's the customs that give me. I can't imagine customs will stop your package for, or at least make you pay a lot for like one acrylic stand. Regardless, you can look into that, sure, but like, if it's too much a hassle, don't worry about it. Realistically, I'll probably, because I don't think there are enough viewers that will be wanting to buy the merch. I think what I'll do is I'll probably make a Google form that's like, hey, pick the merch you want to get, and then I'll contact you, and then I'll just ship it to you, like, from where I am. Well, doxing myself. What if I want more than a standee, though? It's an SFW? It's not. If you bring this to work, I don't think people will look at you weird. I think. How is that an SFW? I don't think it is. What if I want more than a standee, though? Yeah. So I think I can estimate the shipping. Okay, so here's I think how it's gonna work. I'm gonna make a Google form that's gonna be like, okay, here, choose what you want, and then I'll contact you, and then you give me your shipping information, and I'll do a rough estimate online with the postal carrier and see if it's possible to ship it to you. And I'll give you the rough quote, see if you like it. If the shipping is horrible, then you can reject it, you know, or whatever. They will look at me a weird 100% LMAO. It's not that bad. It's Peggy 13 at best. Yeah, come on, guys. Can't handle a little thigh. It's not that bad. I can make 100% worse merch than that, alright? This is fine. I can, but I won't. Kind of unrelated, but cyber related. Yeah. Excuse me. Our taxes thingy got hacked. Now every politician is given their take. It is what it is, and that will always happen when a thing that's related to the government gets hacked. It's bound to happen, really. I mean, good, because like things like that should get scrutinized, you know, alongside the age verification thing. And some of the said politicians have full open WordPress website with no protection. I mean, the people that are commenting usually don't, or at least politicians specifically, they usually don't know what they're talking about, and you know, that it is what it is. You know, I don't think anyone that does cybersecurity is gonna switch lane into politics. Although it'll be very fitting if they do, but like, you know, not a very common occurrence. At least I don't even know if there's any that's like that. Just so funny to me, but it is what it is, yeah. I don't know why people love WordPress so much. Okay, I know why, but like, surely there are better solutions now. For me, these days, I just kind of rely on open, free places where I can host website. If I need it, I just make things that are like marked down and then ship into HTML and put it on a static website. But no, by default, I'm gonna make your own website stuff. Yeah, I know. There's no better solution. Why we still use internal combustion engines? So true. I haven't updated my blog in a while. So long that I think it doesn't build anymore. Because I was getting CI failure last time I updated the dependencies. The main reason being that, well, these days I just kind of put my thoughts on Twitter as opposed to on my blog, although I really should be maintaining it separately. Now speaking of, I think I want to talk about, so this Saturday I'm at HitCon. I'm gonna try to apply for the lightning talk again. So for those unfamiliar, lightning talk is basically a segment where 5 individuals, they get 5 minutes to talk about whatever they want to talk about of an advertisement. So you get 5 minutes on stage. You no more than that. And I had previously talked at Lightning Talk a few times before, but it's been a while since the last picked one up. I'm gonna try to secure a slot. No guarantee though, because I was gonna do one last year, but this slot was already full by the time I got there. We'll see. I do want to talk about the PowerShell extended type data thing that I talked about on Twitter before. I think it'll be an interesting talk, but you know, if it doesn't work out, it's fine. It's whatever. Does Lightning Talk need to fight for the slot? Well, it is first come, first serve. Basically, the way to do it is when it's available for sign up, they put HitCon Lightning Talk on the whiteboard somewhere, and then you have to go there and put whatever you want to talk about on there. Whoever writes first, they get their slot first, or at least they get to decide which slot they want to go in first. You can actually decide which slot you want to go into, if you want to go first, if you want to go last, if you're going to go third, whatever. But if I want to apply, I assume I think the slot usually opens up on the last day, so I basically have to go over there early Saturday. Hope that opens. As for my appearance, I'm probably gonna do the same thing I did last time I was at VB, which, by the way, apparently got memed on last VB, because like people were like, who's this person? Why are they all like? Why are they dressed up like a person that's about to rob a bank? It was like, okay, for context, if you know, you know. This was being spread on LinkedIn. They were like, the most normal talk ever. It's just a picture of me like dressed up with like sunglasses, hoodie, like someone who's about to rob the bank. Why English? Isn't Taiwan vtuber? Well, yeah, I mean, I could be. This is not, you know, the two are not mutually exclusive. I can be a Taiwanese VTuber. I can speak English. They're not. If I'm not aiming for a Taiwanese audience, I am obviously going to be speaking in English, right? Wicked. You know, I wasn't wearing like black sunglasses. Like, are you saying Chinese is your native language? Isn't like the first one you learned? Yes, I do. In fact, I do in fact speak Chinese. I am in fact a native Taiwanese. A lot of people mistake me for American somehow. But no, I am in fact Taiwanese. How is your English that good? It's called hanging out with random strangers online. Growing up, I was like type of people that would be like in VC, getting voice chat, on TF2, on Burnout, bunch of other games. In fact, when I was during high school, CS:GO was still relatively popular. Back in the days when I actually still play CS. I would actually actively prefer Singapore or US servers. So I like specifically go on my way to block all the East Asian servers, because I knew all the callouts and communication better in English than in Chinese or whatever other language that might end up being spoken. So yeah, that was something I actually did. To my detriment, of course, because you know, I had to deal with like a 180 plus ping or something, which is not good for a game of CS. Play CS in a while. Should probably get back to it. Do I want a solo queue though? Nah, I'm good. I heard CS2 is a mess these days. I already forgot all the freaking nades and whatnot as well, especially for the Source 2 maps. Yeah, I'm relearning everything. A lot of people say I'm good accent-wise. Like, I'll blend in as an American just fine. I kind of disagree because I have a very nasal-heavy tone to it. Like, if you go out of your way to listen for it, you'll probably notice. I know the how's your language that good question is annoying, but most talks from Chinese-speaking people on conferences I literally cannot understand. Like, it's impossible to listen to. Yeah, I get it. I mean, I have that kind of accent as well. You just have to really pay attention to it. But yes, I understand that there's most typically a Chinese accent that's most noticeable. Is it possible that you stream in Chinese some other day? So I did that before. I don't tend to do that. It's only when I'm collabing with other Taiwanese streamers that I would speak in Chinese. And because it deviates so much from my existing viewer base, I tend to not do it. But if I were invited to another collab with a bunch of Chinese VTubers, that's when I would do it. But I would have to specifically tell my audience, hey, this is a Chinese stream. Yeah, I want to come back later. Now, with that being said, I've been told that my stream also works well as practicing English too, or at least listening for the pronunciation and whatnot. I mean, if it helps, great. Colin322 person on YouTube. So like, I actually do want to find more Taiwanese VTubers to hang out with, but like, I don't know. It would have to be other English-speaking Taiwanese VTuber, which is incredibly rare. I think I've seen like one other one. That's about it. Think I need to learn English better. I can understand maybe 10%. That's fine. I mean, here's the thing. If you can figure out what I'm saying eventually, then that's great. It means you're learning, right? I hope I am providing some amount of educational opportunities with my streams, whether it's the cybersecurity stuff or language, sure. Why not? I mean, here's the thing, right? It works the other way around as well. Like, when we were talking about the PDB path earlier, I also explained certain Chinese words into English. And I think English viewers can also use that as an opportunity to learn a little bit of Chinese as well, or at least some knowledge of it. It was mostly Discord chatting and voice channels. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, right? If you want to learn a particular language, actually get to start talking to people. Talking is actually using the language is like the way to start learning a particular language. That being said, it also heavily depends on how old you are. So like there is a certain time period where it's best to learn a certain language. Like that is an actual fact. Fun fact, I have an English degree. Most people don't know this about me. Most people thought I graduated with a CS related degree, but no, I have an English degree. And one thing we learned during the semesters I was in that, we learned that there was this thing called, I forgot the exact technical term for it, but basically it describes that there is a certain age range that's best for learning language. And that explains, because we have to know about this if we want to teach kids, right? And I think it was like around like the 10 plus or minus 2 years-ish. That's when you learn a language the most efficiently. And that, I think that explains why that my English is quote-unquote fluent, because that's when I spoke the most English as well. Haven't talked to people, my native English has deteriorated. It can't be that bad. You're still using it to some degree from a day-to-day basis, right? Surely you're looking at English content on Twitter, on the Discord, etc., etc. Now, that being said, if all you're getting exposed is Gen Z lingual, I don't know why to say it, I just want to say I'm that guy that is asking why English on YouTube. I want my content on screen. Comment on screen so I won't open Twitch. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of figured that's the case. But yeah. Yeah, once again, for those people who are on YouTube, I can't show the Twitch, the YouTube chat on screen for two reasons. One is because the original simulcast policy only allowed me to show Twitch chat on screen. That was the original simulcast policy. They changed it since. They now allow different platforms to be on the chat as well, on screen. The second reason is my chat isn't really designed to work with YouTube chat, so that's why that's another reason why I can't show it. I think that's the main reason now, actually. I would have to get a new chat widget if I want to get that figured out. But anyways, welcome to stream on Twitch. I learned most English in my 20s. My English, speaking English is fluent. I don't know about that. Yeah, I mean, that's not to say learning a different language is impossible once you've hit a certain age. It's gonna get gradually harder. I've certainly noticed that learning Japanese is not easy for me compared to learning a different language compared to when I was earlier. That being said, it's not like I'm actively going out of my way to use them. Sure, I read Japanese sometimes. I can kind of understand certain words, but like I'm not going out of my way to study it. Which is a me problem, not a brain problem. That's a skill issue. My first time to chat in a VTuber channel, you answered me, so I'm happy. Thank you. No problem. Hope you're enjoying the stream. I wasn't planning on doing this just chatting stream after this section, but I wasn't planning on. I was like, you know what? It's a little too early for me to end this stream. I say early, and it's actually 1:28 right now, but like, whatever. Oh, since you're Taiwanese, I assume you're Taiwanese. We have merch, and it's gonna be sold at FF this Friday. Come to our booth or something, or check our socials. Still trying to find a voice channel active cybersecurity Discord. I'll be honest, I don't jive with any of the cybersecurity Discord. I am in some of them, but like I never want to talk in there. I don't know, I just don't jive with any of them. Like, I'm in the OA Labs Discord. I'm also in the VX Discord. I don't really talk in any of those because I feel like their expertise and their area of interest is different from mine. That, and I also don't think I am smart enough to make any meaningful contribution to the actual chat. Oh, thank you for follow. 144.4. You're follow. I don't know why that didn't make a notification sound, but anyways. These days, I tend to be more active in various VTuber communities, Discord, rather than any generic Discord channel, Discord servers. I just kind of go around posting food pictures, really. I think that's the thing I'm most known for on certain Discords. Oh, you're the person that posts food pictures. Especially on the Neural Discord. I'm apparently known as the food post person. But I post food pictures so often that I think Discord has banned me a few times from it because I was like spamming food pictures across different servers. I actually got my account flagged like 3 different times already, I think. They thought my account was compromised. I was posting suspicious content, and no, it's just food pictures. But I understand why it's being flagged, because, you know, I was posting across various Discord at like a decently fast pace. No follower alert? Yeah, I don't know what happened. I thought it's supposed to make a sound, but I didn't hear anything, which is weird. All mission dedicated to posting food pictures? No, I think the Discord moderation bot must have been like, oh, you're posting a lot of different pictures at once across different servers. You must be posting Mr. Beast crypto scam or something. I'm gonna post a 4-grid picture, and the inside of it is just gonna be like blue archive. I'm gonna get flagged. I haven't actually tried doing that. If I did that, I feel like I'll actually get my account banned. I hope my Discord account doesn't get banned at some point, because my account is relatively valuable now. Because I have somehow one of the rare Discord handles. My Discord handle is literally just still. Like, the username is just still. STILL. And that's a, you know, if you know anything about usernames on popular platforms, is that any adjective or noun that doesn't have anything attached to it is like the most valuable account somehow. And like a few days ago, a few weeks ago, I actually enabled friend request from everyone just for a bit. I was like, does this really need to be off? Because like I had a person that was trying to reach me, and I told them to add my Discord, and they were like, oh, I can't add you. I was like, oh, oops. Well, let me turn on the friend request from everyone. And then I immediately remembered why I had it off. Because the moment I turned it off, from that day, within 24 hours, I got two random friend requests already. Presumably they were trying to go for my account. Because like when Discord rolled out the discriminator change, where previously Discord was using a username plus discriminator system, now it's just username. When they made that change, on that day I got so many freaking DMs about, hey, are you selling your account? Can I buy your account? I was like, no. Fuck off. Yeah, here. Yeah, I turned that back off again. Selling Discord? I mean, even if someone offered me like $10,000, I still won't do it. $1 million? I don't think I will. Besides, you never know. Like, once after you've exchanged your credentials, are they actually gonna pay? Are you gonna charge back? Who knows? That account is still you? Good one. Still get it? Haha. Haha. I've gotten that joke so many times in real life, by the way. When people first hear my name. Hi, my name is Still. Oh, Still? Like, and they're gonna try to make a joke of the adjective, like, I'm like, yeah, I haven't heard that one before. Do you have a? I assume you mean regular schedule. So, I do have a schedule, but like, it's different every week. So you're gonna have to follow my social for it. I'll post it on Twitter, Discord, Blue Sky if you have that. I also post on Threads. If you're Taiwanese, you're probably more familiar with Threads. I do have a Threads account. I do post there. In fact, that account is mostly for Taiwanese because I only post Chinese on there. If you're an English-speaking viewer, you check out my Thread account, you're gonna be very confused because Meta's all translation is horrible. Twitter is actually pretty good these days, but like Meta's, horrible. I don't know how Meta has like a good AI model, but like, well, I wouldn't say good AI model. Actually, their chatbot sucks. Somehow they have the worst auto translation feature. Thread sucks, by the way. In many ways, the search feature barely works. I still use it because most Taiwanese are on there. I think that's like, I think I mentioned this before. Threads is like 25% occupied by Taiwanese. I'm not even exaggerating. Like, officially, if you look at the stats, it literally is like 23% or something of the global traffic for Threads are coming from Taiwan. Somehow. We're somehow the most active viewers on that platform. Where most people are like, what the hell is Threads? But yes, if you want schedule, I'll make a ping for it on Discord. It's gonna be a pinned post on Twitter, Blue Sky, Threads. Now, these days I actually don't 100% guarantee that there is gonna be a schedule. Because it really depends on how I'm feeling that week and also whether or not I'm super busy that week. If I'm super busy, there is a chance that I won't post a schedule. Tony is not behind the firewall, right? We are not. Believe it or not, we are very different from West Taiwan. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, we do not have a GFW of any kind. We are free to access anything we want. Well, with certain limits, because occasionally, their domain's gonna be seized. I'm not gonna pretend DNS poisoning isn't a thing here, because like, our government actually does actively block a few websites, but only if like they're flagged as like criminal activity, and only if you use like the upstream ISP DNS. So if I use like 168.95.1.1, that's the default Taiwanese DNS that our ISP uses. Then DNS poisoning is possible. Certain blacklisted websites will get redirected to the government website instead. That is a thing, but like it's easy enough to get around. I don't think it's an issue. I was just scrolling threads a few minutes ago, found your channel, just clicked in. Oh, yeah. Found your channel, very fun. Well, thank you. I hope it's a good time for you. I do gaming, I do infosec. Actually, I would say gaming takes up like 80% of it. I get this comment a lot, or at least I get the sentiment a lot. Not necessarily, people don't actually necessarily speak up about it. Is that the general sentiment or question is like, hey, why don't you stream more infosec stuff more often? And my answer is, I already do this for a living. Do I really want to do this in my off time? On my off time where I'm like supposed to be relaxing? Not really, because like, do I want to do more quote-unquote work after work? Like, it does feel like work sometimes, and so that's why I only do it when I feel like it. And right now at that pace, it seems to be like twice a month or once a month. And I know that probably sucks for some of you. You guys, you might think like, oh, why don't you, I wish you did more content, and more InfoSec specific content. I'm like, I get it, but right now VTubing is something I enjoy as a hobby. If it's a work that I actively need to do as a way to get income, then sure, I'll probably adjust my schedule to be more aligned with what I'm more known for. But right now, I'm just I kind of prefer to use it to relax a little bit. That's also why I'm not too fussed about the overall statistics of my channel. Now that being said, I also do look at my peers sometimes, other Taiwanese VTubers that I'm friendly with. I'll sometimes look at their stats and think, wow, how am I still at the size I'm at for like 4 years compared to them where they've grown like twice-fold at the very least. I do occasionally worry about that, but these days I try not to think about it. Because I gotta remember, I'm not doing this for a living. I think I'm fortunate enough to do what I do. Both in terms of work and actually doing the VTubing things. Yeah. And then, like, for example, the merch stuff as well. I make merch, don't expect to make anything in return. In fact, I'm pretty sure I'll be losing money, but who the hell cares? This is fun. If I can afford to make merch that I think looks good, then sure, why the heck not? I'm looking at my merch right now. It's like right in front of me. I have the standee in front of me, right next to the titles. I think it's just nice to have something made. All right. With that being said, I think I'm ready to call it a day. Yeah, for those who are just wandering themselves into the stream, check the VOD if you're interested in the actual stream's topic. If not, well, I'm gonna see you guys sometime. Ooh, I don't know, Tuesday. We'll see. I'm gonna send you guys off to Soy, who's doing the collab right now. Yeah, thank you guys for stopping by again. I have quite a few viewers right now. Huh. Well, hope you had a good time, and I'll see you guys later. Good night. It's like 1 a.m. I gotta get some things done. Bye bye.